Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I'm going to go over how to make SOPs the easy way. I talk to so many contractors, home service business owners, and they all say the same thing. They all want systems, they all want SOPs, and they've tried to do it themselves. They've tried to, write down the processes for everything. They've tried to ask their employees to write down everything that they're doing. And in the end, they get a bunch of pieces of paper that don't make sense. They never actually use them. It doesn't change their business, and it doesn't actually give them the freedom and the flexibility that they want, and it doesn't help them create sustainable growth in their business. And so I'm going to take all the complexity out of SOPs, and I'm going to help you write them and use them in your business the easy way. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to go over what is an SOP and why is it important in our business. Then secondly, we're going to go over how to make an SOP. And this is where it's going to become way easier and less complex than you've ever read about or watched in another video or anything like that. Thirdly, we're going to have the three things that SOPs need in order for them to actually be successful. And last but not least, we're going to go over the common mistakes that people make when making their SOPs. So let's dive right in. The first one is, what is an SOP? An SOP is a standard operating procedure. It can also be considered a collection of interrelated components working together for a specific outcome. This is really important when you have different tools, different processes, and you put them together to create a result. Then you communicate that by either writing it down, doing a video, doing a screen recording, or some way of communicating that to another person, so that way that process with those components can be repeated again and again. So why should we have SOPs in our business? Well, it's a predictable way to repeat success. If you have a salesperson closing 80% of your sales and you have another salesperson only closing 10% of the deals, then you want to actually understand what processes, what is those procedures, how is that person doing 80% close rate when you have another person only doing a 10. So you want to write down, document, and create a predictable way to repeat that successful 80%. The next thing it does is create consistency. If you go to a restaurant and you order a hamburger one day and it tastes delicious, and go there the next day and it's not that good, then you probably won't actually go back. Your customers look at consistency the same way. If they hire you to do a job and you do it well and they're like, wow, this is amazing, and then that consistency is not there the next time they ask you to come out and do another job, or they're referring you to their friends and then you're not doing a good job at their houses, then you don't actually have that consistency for you to grow. But when you put systems in place, you put SOPs in place, you can actually create that consistency, which helps with sustainable growth. The next, it shifts your business from being reactive to proactive. So instead of constantly putting out fires and having your office door be a revolving door that people are constantly coming to you with problems and, okay, you got to fix this, you got to do this, you got to call this client, you got to figure out why the job materials aren't there and that type of thing, then you're constantly just reacting with whatever shows up in front of your face on a daily basis, and you don't actually have the time or energy or mental capacity to focus on your business. And so when you put systems in place, a lot of those issues actually resolve themselves, and you can be proactive, you can plan, you can strategize, you can actually get things done in a timely manner and have you have success in your business. The next, it builds confidence in your team. Now, when you do SOPs the wrong way, you typically have employees that won't adopt the SOPs. They won't follow them. They won't do anything about them. And therefore, it doesn't actually create success that you want. But when you do the SOPs the right way and you implement them the right way, then you can actually build confidence in your team, because they know that if they follow it, they will be successful and they will grow in your company. And there is opportunity when they follow those SOPs. The next thing is that it increases productivity and efficiency. When people don't have to constantly make decisions or second guess how to do something or call somebody up to get an answer on something because they didn't know how to do something, that all takes time. Either mental time, physical time, it delays jobs, it reduces the productivity of your team. But when there is actual systems in place and there's processes in place, then they don't have to stop and wait for things. They can actually keep working, which increases the amount of output that you get from each employee, which they make you money. So when you increase their output, you make more money. The next thing is it helps you reach your business goals faster. When you design your SOPs to actually help you reach your goals, and then you follow those SOPs, you can reach your goals. It's a strategy plan that actually gets you to your goals. The next one is it increases your revenue while saving you time. So again, if you're not in that reactive mode, if you're not constantly asking or answering all these questions from everybody, you can actually grow your business sustainably. You can increase your revenue. You can save yourself time. And last but not least is it's the key to scaling. So all these businesses that you see around you and you're like, why are they growing so fast? How are they growing so fast? It comes down to one thing: systems, and those systems are communicated through SOPs. So let's move on to the next set: how to make an SOP. The best SOPs Answer the most questions. If you literally just ask yourself a ton of questions about a process and write the answers to them, that SOP will save you so much more time than if you sit down for hours trying to go, okay, step 1, step 2, this, that, and you miss all these details and you have it so complex that nobody actually understands how to follow it, and you're not really answering questions. But if you have SOPs that answer the most questions, that is the easiest way to make an SOP. Here are some questions that you can ask to actually create those SOPs. For example, what tools, equipment, and passwords are needed? What issues could you run into, and how could you solve those issues? So already looking into that future, seeing what issues there are, and then figuring out what the process would be for that. This is going to save you so much time and answer more questions, because just because you have an SOP that's got 3 steps to it and you follow the 3 steps, that doesn't actually answer all the questions. And so you're still going to get people coming into your office, calling you up on the phone, texting you, and asking you questions. So you want to answer those right up front. What are those issues that they may, run into, that, there may, rise in the situation? How do you solve those ahead of time? What is the definition of done? So when you do this process, what is it supposed to look like? What is that end result? What are you trying to achieve by following this? Most SOPs actually miss this. They miss understanding what the end result is, and it just becomes a laundry list of chores for an employee to follow. And they're like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is kind of a waste of time. It doesn't really do anything. It doesn't change the business. It doesn't help me make more money in your business, and those types of things. And so they end up not following it. But when you have a very defined, specific expected outcome, a specific result, something that if this SOP is followed 100%, what happens? When you define that, your employees actually understand where that finish line is, where that goal is, what they're working towards when going through all the steps. The next one is, how do we know it was successful? Okay, so maybe we get to the finish line, but how do we actually know that we did it the right way? If we say, hey, this is a report, this is how it needs to get done, this is all the steps to it. When you submit, the report is done, great, except if you don't actually define that it's successful when you have that report done on the 5th day of every month, then it's not going to actually be a successful process. So what is that thing that needs to be included in your SOP to make sure it is successful, or we know that it was successful? When we have a 5-star review from a customer, we know that we did that process successfully. So the goal is to get those 5-star reviews from our customers and have that, build that reputation, so everyone else can say, whoa, this company does amazing work. Look at all these 5-star reviews. Now, the next one is, how do we fix or update this process? So your employees actually probably know better processes for their specific job than you do, because you're not doing it. They are. They're, boots on the ground. They're in the trenches. They're doing the work, and they may have better ways of doing something. For example, my husband's in real estate, and he used to use this company to do all his inspections. And so he had, this company, and they would usually send one of their employees out, and he had great rapport with his employee. And every single time the employee went out to a job, he would take a picture of the house and say, am I at the right house? Am I inspecting the right place? Is everything fine? Because in the area that we are at, they're doing a lot of construction. And so Google Maps doesn't actually tell you where the houses are. And you're kind of just guessing. There's no numbers on the houses, the brand new houses, and that type of thing. So this employee would always take a picture of the house and say, hey, is this the right house? Am I inspecting the right house? And then my husband would text back and go, yep, that's the right house. I'll see you in a little bit. And so the inspector would do his inspection, and then my husband would come and meet him with his clients, and they'd go over the inspection report, and it worked out right. Well, one time the employee was out of town on vacation, and so the owner actually came and did the inspection instead of the employee. She texts and says, okay, I'm almost done with the inspection. I'll see you in a few minutes. So Curtis goes over there, my husband, and he meets his clients there. And the inspector's not there. So he calls her up and he's like, well, where are you? And she's like, I'm standing on the driveway. And he's like, I'm standing on the driveway. Where are you? And she's like, well, I'm at this house. Come to find out, she inspected the house down the street, not the house that he was selling or he was helping his clients buy. And so that simple process that her employee did to text and say, hey, this is the house, is not in their standard operating procedures. He just started doing that to make sure that he was at the right house. And so those are the types of things that you want to make sure you get that feedback from your employees. Be like, wow, what are you doing that's not in this process? Because you're making successful ways in your business or in your job. And I want to make sure that we include those in those SOPs, because just because you're an employee or you're an owner does not mean that you're the keeper of all the knowledge. Your employees actually can provide feedback and can provide improvements to your processes and make your company a better company. So with all this being said, let's go over some few tips on how to actually make SOPs. The first easy way to make SOPs is to train your team to create and improve your SOPs. You don't need to write all the SOPs yourself. You don't need to, sit there and waste hours of time trying to write down everything. If you have a certain person doing a certain process, then they should be responsible for writing that process down and letting it be communicated easily to that next person. The next thing is to use new hires to test, update, and optimize your SOPs. So anytime you have a new employee get onboarded, it's like, hey, your job is to look over these SOPs, follow these SOPs, and we're going to find holes in them. We're going to find ways that it's not clear, it's confusing, it doesn't answer questions, and those types of things. And you are going to help us in this process. This is your job. Right when you start, this is what you're going to do. The next one is make sure you make it easy and simple. When you have 20 pages of blah, 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 and nothing makes sense, and you're trying to figure it out, your employees are going to throw that manual out the window, and they're going to just make up the process themselves. You want to make sure it's very clear. You want to make sure it's very concise. You want to make sure it's actually condensed to the fewest steps possible while still getting that result. The next thing is that you want to make sure you transfer responsibility of an SOP to someone. So what do I mean by that? If, let's say, you are the business owner and you're wearing all the hats and you're about to hire an admin, your admin obviously doesn't have an SOP. They're not hired yet, so they may not actually know what they're supposed to do. So you can go ahead and go, okay, well, these are the tasks that I want my admin to do, and you write them down, but then you didn't actually transfer that responsibility, that SOP to them. And so they just keep following, oh, you told me to do this, so I'll do it. Oh, you told me to do that, and so I'll do it. And so they're actually not getting direction and ownership of their position. They're just waiting for you to tell them what to do every day. And so you want to make sure you actually pass the baton, transfer that responsibility to them and say, okay, you're responsible for this. If you're coming to me and asking questions, that means it's your responsibility to go put the answer in the SOP. It's your responsibility to update the SOP. It's your responsibility to optimize the SOP and make sure it's reaching our results that we want as a business. And last but not least, make sure you include the relationship to other systems, processes, and even people within your SOP. So just because a salesperson has a process on how to close a sale, okay, what happens after that? How do they take that customer and transfer it to fulfillment? How do they let the project manager know that there's a new client? Or marketing, okay, we get all these leads, but how do we know that those leads are actually being followed up with and actually being, called by the salesperson? So those transfers of responsibility are a lot of times where balls get dropped. SOPs become unsuccessful because there's these gaps between where one SOP finishes and another SOP starts. So you want to make sure that you include those transfers within the SOP to make sure that there is no gaps within the systems of your business. Next, we're going to move on to the 3 things every SOP needs. So when you've checked the box on all 3 of these things, you know that you'll have a good SOP. The first one is a defined purpose or result. Where do you want this SOP to finish? How will you know that you've reached that result that you want? And if you're not reaching that result, what do you need to change in the system in order to reach that result? So if you know where you're ending, then you can work your way backwards in the SOP, which brings us to number 2, is a step-by-step process to reach the result. So if we know where that result is, then we can work our way backwards and provide the step-by-step results, making sure we're answering all the questions for that SOP. And last but not least is a process to improve the process. I call this a feedback loop. How do you actually take that process and update it? Who's responsible for it? How is it supposed to be done? How often is it supposed to be done? The nuts and bolts of actually updating that process is almost more important than the process itself. Because here's the thing. If your employees don't actually know how to update a process, what happens is they look at it and go, well, I know a better way. They throw it out the window. They do their better way. And a month later, you're like, why aren't you following the process? They're like, well, it doesn't work. And they didn't actually do anything to change it because there was no process to change it. And so then all of a sudden, all your SOPs are out of date and everyone's doing whatever they want to do. And there's no consistency in your business anymore. And so therefore, you're back at square one. So by actually adding this process to improve the process, you can have your employees, okay, you want to change the process. This doesn't make sense. It's your responsibility to do that because it's your responsibility to follow this SOP and not make up your own system. If you want to make up your own system, you have to include it in the SOP. And so when you add that extra layer of responsibility to it, your SOPs always stay up to date, your consistency stays strong, and you're not optimizing your systems all the time. Your employees are. And it is a beautiful thing when they do that. Here are some common mistakes that I see business owners make and employees make when making SOPs. So the first one is they make it really difficult, complex to follow, or irrelevant. What I mean by that is they systemize and write SOPs for something that has nothing to do with their business, or they use this process once in maybe every 5 years, and it's not a way to improve their business. If they're writing SOPs for something that's a one-time thing, it's hard for that success to be repeated. But if you're actually writing SOPs for things that are repeated consistently, that's where those are the most important SOPs to write. So don't just go, okay, I'm going to figure out how to write a process for making coffee that we do once a month for our team meetings. Like, that's not really important process versus what's the process of this one guy closing 80% and this other guy only closing 10. Let's figure out the process so that way we can get this other guy to actually close 80% and our sales will go through the roof and our business will grow. That's a more relevant SOP to write than the one about something that you're not going to really use that often. The next thing is, don't include phrases such as in a timely manner, or use the right one, or just figure it out. Those types of things create so much vagueness within your SOPs that they don't really tell you what to do. They still ask questions. Well, timely manner, does that mean at the end of the business day today? Does that mean tomorrow? Does that mean by Friday at 5 p.m.? Does that mean this quarter, this month, this year? What is a timely manner? It creates more questions than answers by using this phrase. So common mistakes is it includes these phrases. Use the right one. Well, what is the right one? The one on the right, the one on the left, this tool, that tool? What does it actually mean when you say the right one? Or, oh, just figure it out. Well, that means the SOP doesn't actually answer what it is. So yes, figure it out, but then go and write down what you did and let's talk about the results and see if that actually worked in our business. So, a lot of times just business people are like, I don't know, just go figure it out. And it doesn't change their business that way because they don't know why they made those, created those results, and they don't know how to improve those results. So make sure you don't use these phrases in your SOPs. And next is, there's no process for providing feedback, which means that if a process isn't working, then there's no way to actually fix it. And so people will just ignore it. You want to make sure there is a feedback loop process within every SOP. I hope this video helped you in understanding how to create SOPs and how they can be used and leveraged in your business to create success. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.